try and smooth relations with countries that are former French colonies that may not necessarily have been in good terms.
Particularly Algeria, as you and I were discussing just a couple of days ago. I think it's going to be very interesting to hear how he reflects on the events that have taken place here in Johannesburg today, what he says about the declaration as well. We've been talking a lot about this declaration and this sense of overwhelming consensus that President Ramaphosa, right at the start of the day, sort of staked a claim to for the declaration. Very, very important aspect, that, to hear what the French president has to say about that. And there'll be other briefings taking place in those briefing rooms as the evening continues, as the leaders prepare to make their way to President Ramaphosa's diplomatic reception for them tonight here.
Indeed, Simon. And let's introduce our next guest while we wait for the French president to get all set up so that he addresses members of the media. And we should just warn our next guest that as soon as that happens, we are going to be interrupted here and throw to that media briefing. All right, we're joined now by Winnie Byanyima. She is a former diplomat and she currently is the executive director at UNAIDS. Previously, before that, she led Oxfam. Her life's work, I think you by now realize that it's been on all matters to do with inequality. Let's bring her into the conversation. Good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. Well, this summit has had lots to talk about. In fact, it's part of the agenda item, the issue of inequality in the world. To you, to your mind, how do you think these leaders have traversed these difficult issues?
Well, first, it is to President Ramaphosa's credit that he decided that the issue of inequality should be at the heart of the discussions of the G20. He put it there. He appointed what he calls an extraordinary committee on inequality, 6 people, chaired by Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz, and I'm honored to be one of the 6. We made a report, and we've just presented it today. But even before we presented it, we had already circulated it, and many leaders, prominent leaders of the G20, came out in full support of the report and of its main recommendation, which is to set up an international panel on inequality similar to the International Panel on Climate Change, because we argue that what we have observed from all the evidence we have scanned is that as there is a climate emergency, there is an inequality emergency. That inequality has been rising, income inequality, wealth inequality. In the last 25 years, 40% of all the wealth that was created was captured by the 1% at the top. And the bottom half of humanity took just 1%. This isn't only bad for growth, it's bad for social cohesion, and it's undermining democracy, making the economies work more and more in favor of the people at the top, less and less in favor for everybody. So there is a need to tackle it for the sake of stability and peace in the world, for democracy in the world, and for growth, sustainable growth.
And that report is an extraordinary piece of work. I think it was published maybe 10 days to 2 weeks ago.
That's right.
And I gave it a read. That recommendation about creating the international panel, will that happen? Does that now happen? Or does it depend on the incoming G20 presidency?
Absolutely not, because actually President Ramaphosa has been so smart. He's put the report there and us leaders that let's get on with it, let's do it. So President Sanchez of Spain has said it's the right thing to do. President Lula, a number of leaders, former presidents, 30 of them have signed a letter saying it's the right thing to do. Nobel laureates, 700 economists from all over the world. So it's gaining a momentum. The Secretary General of the United Nations has just said now that this is a right idea. I'm going to follow up on it. So we see a groundswell of support, and it doesn't need any votes of any important body. As long as there are enough countries that want to support it, the idea can start. African Union has supported it. European Council has supported it.
So as one of the authors of the report, you must have a sense of tremendous achievement and pride tonight.
Absolutely, and humility, because for us, we were 6 people asked to take on this important task. But really, it is President Ramaphosa and South Africa that said, this is our issue. And I said it to the leaders, I said, well, for President Ramaphosa to put this on the agenda of the G20, here in Africa, in South Africa, a country that has known inequality like no other, you should take it up.
Can I ask you this question? And it's to do with the replenishing of global funds that look at matters to do with disease, whether you talk tuberculosis, whether you talk HIV/AIDS. Do you think that these leaders can do anything more than what they have bashed here as ideas, so that those funds are indeed replenished? Because what COVID showed us was that countries in the north can hoard resources, can hoard vaccines if they so wish, if they feel that their citizens deserve that, and we on the continent of Africa will always get the scraps. How do we bridge that?
You know, President Ramaphosa has been a very busy man this year, because as well as hosting G20 in South Africa, for South Africa, he had also offered to be a co-host of the replenishment of the Global Fund to fight HIV/AIDS, TB, and malaria. So 2 days ago, on the margins of this meeting, there was an important meeting he co-hosted with Prime Minister Starmer of the UK, but he was really the one carrying the burden, to raise the money for the next 3 years to fight HIV/AIDS, TB, and malaria. The money that was pledged at that meeting didn't meet the full amount, that the target that was intended, 18 billion, but $11.3 billion was pledged, and a number of big donors like France, which is usually number 2 big donor, hasn't come through yet because of its budget process. It's not saying no, it will come later. European Union didn't come in yet. Sweden, Japan, these are major donors. So I think we may get up to 14 billion or so, and that is remarkable given the state of the world today. There is a weakening of multilateralism. There is a withdrawal, a retrenchment from commitments to fight diseases together. We are seeing money declining that was put there to help developing countries that need some support. So in this climate, what has been achieved today, I give credit to President Ramaphosa, Prime Minister Starmer, Peter Sands, the head of Global Fund, but it's not enough. It's not enough, and it worries me.
Were you surprised yesterday by that sudden news that the United States government was kicking in $4.6 billion, I think?
No, I wasn't surprised. The United States has been really the leading contributor to global health, and on this particular disease, particularly of HIV/AIDS, which I lead on, there has been a bipartisan, Republican, Democratic consensus to support the world to fight the disease to the end. So they put money in the global port, the global fund, multilateral, and they also put down their own money, bilateral program, it's called the PEPFAR program, in about 54 countries around the world. So this support has been there. It was paused this year, but it's been brought back, not to the same amount and not for the same things. I wish it could be used to fight for the greatest impact, to reach most people. That's another story. But I would say I was not surprised, and we are grateful that that money is there.
Yeah.
The most important thing is that we are seeing a time when ODA, as we have known it, is changing and is disappearing.
Yes.
We do need, and I'm seeing Africa rising, to find ways to fund its own health agenda, to achieve health sovereignty, and that includes also manufacturing medicines in Africa.
Just finally.
We have a long journey, but there's determination to move away from dependence.
Finally and briefly, just picking up on part of what you said as you were responding to Simon's question, the weakening of multilateralism. That is something that I think we've all witnessed. But in this summit, it's almost a revival of multilateralism, at least the manner in which South Africa is communicating. Do you really see that happening, or do you believe that it's just going to be confined here? Once this summit moves to the next presidency, multilateralism once again almost dies a slow death?
Well, I'm an optimist, but I am not just a romantic. I'm realistic, but I'm optimistic. I think what President Ramaphosa has been able to do is to galvanize some will of the rich countries to work together on the most pressing problems the world is facing. The challenge of sustainability, climate, the challenge of inequality, and on the issues of trade and the economy and growth. So I'm hearing, when I was in the room, I could hear governments saying, look, let us get back to solving global problems together. There may be some who don't think like us, but there are many like-minded. Let's move the agenda together. So I think there's, out of this meeting, perhaps more determination to do certain important things like strengthen WTO and reform its rules so that they can use it to get us back onto a rules-based trade system. I see some push on addressing the debt issue that is really strangling mostly African countries, but also some middle-income countries. And I saw some strong statements about working together to fight infectious diseases, such as pandemics, such as HIV/AIDS. So and on climate, quite some commitments there. So I'm not pessimistic, I'm optimistic. Every time leaders come together and pledge, they are people, they are honest people. When they pledge, they must do something to move forward. So I think, yeah, it has been a moment of galvanizing belief and faith and working through the multilateral system.
Dr. Winnie
There's a lot
Byanyima.
about financing and putting strength in the multilateral development banks as the way to finance the future, not so much ODA, but borrowing at good rates and being able to access good financing for development. These are very important commitments, and I believe that governments don't commit just to walk away and do nothing.
Winnie Byanyima, thank you very much for making time for us.